SMU has made a necessary adjustment to its offense, but it needs to get back to doing something it was doing earlier in the year to have a successful finish to this season.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'll tell you what that is here in just a moment. Welcome to Locked On SMU here on a Tuesday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Our episode today is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Also coming up on the show today, we haven't done this enough, so we're going to give props to Scott Symons for his defense's performance against Miami this past weekend, plus a big recruiting factor for SMU is going in their direction as the Mustangs continue to impress blue chip targets. We'll talk about that to close up the show. But let me go ahead and start with this. And if you followed the Mustangs pretty closely from the beginning of the season to now, you'll know something has changed. And it is the running game. The running game is, it's night and day. It is night and day compared to what it was at the beginning of the year. I'm going to run these stats down for you. First game of the season, SMU runs the ball for 4.2 yards a carry. That is without sacks taken out. The Baylor game, they run it for 3.7 yards per carry in totality. If you take the sacks out, you're about 4.5. TJ Harden ran the ball for 6 yards a carry in that game. So they ran the ball well. Missouri State game, ran the ball for 4.9 yards a carry. You take out the sacks, you're at 5.5, almost 6. TCU ran it for 3.5 yards a carry. Same sort of thing with the taking out the sacks. But in SEC play, the Mustangs have not ran it well at all. The Syracuse game, Clemson game, Stanford game, and this week against Miami. Hell, through regulation against Miami, they were at -2 yards through the first 60 minutes. So SMU has not ran the ball particularly well, but that's okay because in this modern age of offensive football, right, play callers are a little bit more adept in figuring out ways to run the ball without traditionally running the football. The quick game, swing it out to the flat, use the perimeter game a lot. So Rhett Lashlee is very equipped to be able to call an offense that isn't excelling in the traditional run game. And again, you don't have the quarterback factor in this very much because of injury and whatnot. And also the other contributing factor is that the offensive line is banged up. The offensive line has been more and more banged up while the defensive lines that you've played have gotten better and better and better. Okay, so there's a very easy equation to see as to why this has happened. But I think they need to get back to it. And Notre Dame struggled to run the football. This is the first time we're going to mention BC this week. Notre Dame had some problems running the football against Boston College this weekend, and that's how BC was really able to keep it at a respectable distance. I mean, it was 12-7 at the break, and, they never really separated from BC until the second half. Now, Notre Dame did, I will say this, Notre Dame did end up running the football for 5.5 yards a carry down the stretch of the game when Notre Dame pulled away, outscored them 13-3 in the second half, and that was largely due to that. But I think SMU is going to have to get back to running the football to do two things. One, you can't go so far out of balance, right? You don't want to go so far out of balance to where you become predictable and teams can prepare for you easier. That's number one. But number two, it takes some pressure off of a pass pro that has been up and down this year, and it takes pressure off of Kevin Jennings, whose health has been up and down this year. When you can run the football, it takes pressure off of everything. And it's kind of a kind of wild oxymoron that running game starts with the offensive line, but in reality, it takes pressure off the offensive line when you can do it well. But that is the reality of the situation, is that once you can run the ball, all of a sudden the front seven or front six or whatever is in so much flux because they don't know what you're going to do that it makes it easier on your offensive line once you can accomplish that one thing. So you're still winning games in conference play. You're 4-1 in conference play. But yeah, I don't think that particular side is good enough. We know it's good enough. We know the offense is good enough when they're operating through the quick game and you're getting it to your playmakers and you're getting the ball out quick. And on the occasion, Kevin Jennings is extending the play and finding guys in the scramble drill. Like, we know the offense is good enough to do that. But I would like to see, especially, by the way, in games where you want to do one of two things. Shorten the game, which I'm not sure SMU is very capable of doing right now. And also, what's the weather going to be like in Boston this week? You know what? Let's check. Because I haven't checked on this entire week. As my computer. Anyway, we'll check on that later. Saturday, it's going to be cold. It's going to be cold in Boston on Saturday morning and for an 11 a.m. kick. So you're going to want to be able to do that, especially going down the stretch of the season. Now, SMU doesn't have any blisteringly cold weather games because they get Louisville at home and then go to Cal, but you're going to want to be able to be two-dimensional because Louisville obviously is a team that can beat you, and Cal is a team that just hung with Virginia this weekend. So the more two-dimensional you can be, the more pressure you take off of the quarterback, the more pressure you take off of a banged-up offensive line as well. So that to me is something that stands out from SMU. But what was encouraging to me about SMU with the running game is the fact that as the game waned and fatigue started to set in, did y'all notice this against Miami? As fatigue started to set in, SMU became the more physical team. So that tells me that they're in pretty good condition. They started leaning on Miami. Miami's defensive push got a little bit less, and then the hole started opening up. They got all 25 of those yards in overtime on the ground. That's a stepping stone and a building block. That is certainly a building block to getting back to running the football well. And you're going to have to go with TJ Harden. Shady's going to be involved. Chris Johnson Jr. will be involved. But if they can sustain a run game, and when they want shorten the game, I don't know how they lose another game in conference play. Because at that point, your offensive attack can be all over the place in a good way, right? You can attack down the field if you want, in the intermediate game if you want, and in the short game if you want. And if you say, well, the pass pro hasn't been good enough because, too good enough to attack the intermediate, well, you run the ball better. The play action game comes into play, and you can, start to keep those defensive linemen at bay a little bit, which gives your offensive line just enough time to be able to keep Kevin Jennings clean to attack the middle of the field. So everything starts with the run game, and you've gotten through ACC play so far. So far, you've gotten through ACC play pretty well without being able to run the football. But I think as we get into November and teams start to have more and more film on you, that's something you're going to want to do better. And also keep this in mind too. SMU will not play another defensive line that is as good as Clemson's or Miami's. Like, those are the two best defensive lines. And you beat both of those teams, which is so wild to say that they have beaten both of those teams and are still not ranked. That damn loss to Wake Forest, man. That loss to Wake Forest. The college football playoff initial rankings are coming out tonight. If SMU had not lost to Wake Forest, you would probably be in position to make the playoff in the bracket because you'd be the leading team with Georgia Tech losing. You'd be the leading team in the ACC. Oh, well, you're gonna have to win out the rest of the season to have a chance to get there by virtue of the ACC Championship game. But who knows? It very well could happen. But you are not going to play a defensive line that are better than Clemson and better than Miami's. So, just by virtue of that, you should be okay to start running the football better to complement and complete your offensive attack. Coming up next, let's give props to Scott Symons and his defense. I want to tell you about something that I did not think was going to happen, but has happened. And plus, they got a budding superstar coming up next. The NBA is back, and there's no place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything, from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to the show here on Locked On SMU. Grayson Singleton. And hey, make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Give me a follow on Twitter, Gray_Singleton2. And appreciate all of you listening on the audio side on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So I want to go back to the Miami game just for a second, because tomorrow we're going to start talking about Boston College. We're going to turn the page. But SMU's defense, just in terms of the numbers, played as best winning football as you possibly could have. And they did it in a way that I didn't really think they would have to. You remember this. I said they need to get multiple turnovers, and they certainly did. And boy, did they come in critical moments. But I did not see them getting multiple turnovers and winning this football game without getting pressure on Carson Beck. And I don't even have to tell you the numbers. For those of you that watched the game, you know they didn't get pressure on Carson Beck. Like, Carson Beck was hardly touched in this game. And look, by the way, injuries and context matter. You weren't playing with Cam Robertson. He missed the game again. And you played the best offensive line that you will see all year, unless you happen to run into, like, Ohio State or something in the college football playoff. And by the way, I don't know if their offensive line is better. You might have played the best offensive line in the country. Like, I think that is a reasonable thing to say. So, context, again, is going to matter here. But no sacks. SMU had no sacks. They had 4 tackles for loss, which is fine, I guess, but no sacks. And Carson Beck still did Carson Beck things, which is why on Monday I was like, okay, maybe Carson Beck is just bad. Right. You made him uncomfortable, and you took the ball away. Now, one of those was on a drop pass where you were just being opportunistic with Ahmad Moses. Give him credit for that. You got to make plays and be in the right spot, and you get credit for that. But I think the defense played situationally so well. They played so well situationally because first drive of the game, get them off the field and punt. And then punt, interception, punt, field goal before the half. Like, this is a hard Miami offense to keep down. And in that second quarter, SMU won that quarter on the back of its defense. 1, 2, 3, 4 possessions in which Miami did not score the ball. And in a higher possession game like this one was, right, that would be one where you had a little bit of concern. Now, the game did not start that way because there were extended possessions galore, right, to begin the game. There were only 4 possessions combined in the first quarter, and then that ballooned in the second and third quarters, right, or the second quarter was at its apex. But how about this? This was reminiscent of the Wake Forest game. Wake Forest keeps driving down the field, but no points. And they came up with a huge stop. It was 17-14 in the third quarter, and Miami goes on a 9-play drive. I believe it's the longest drive of the game. No, their next drive was 10 plays, where they kicked a field goal. But an extended drive into SMU territory, ball's at the SMU 29-yard line, 4th down and 1. And Terry Webb comes through and makes a stop. And that's what's interesting to me about Scott Symons' team. Because conventional wisdom and conventional knowledge about the two teams would tell you SMU doesn't get that stop. Miami continues marching the ball down the field and probably scores. And at that point, with the way SMU's offense was going and Kevin Jennings was banged up, even if Miami kicked a field goal, you probably would have been uneasy with the score being 20-14 at that point. You would have been kind of uneasy. because SMU had not gone to that point. Keep this in mind. SMU had only gone on one extended drive that resulted in a touchdown. One extended drive. That was at the beginning of the third quarter. Other than that, SMU's touchdown, remember, came on a short field and on a one-play drive that was a coverage bust. So they had not driven the ball down the field with regularity against Miami. So the proposition of 20-14 versus 17-14 is incredibly night and day. So situationally, they had to get that stop, and they did. And that's what Scott Symons' defense does. They flirt with a little bend and break, but with a bunch of dudes and really one really key dude who's banged up and out, they got the stop. And that's what you got to say about Scott Symons' defense, is that they're going to come to play when it matters the most. When it's time to go toe-to-toe, mano y mano on somebody, they are going to get the stop, right? And obviously, that's what ultimately keeps the game tied. Kick a field goal, exchange a couple more field goals, we're going to overtime. Like, they kept them in the game there. And the fact that they're doing that and getting turnovers, I remember I said this at the beginning of the season. I needed to see SMU get more turnovers because they got into the college football playoff last year with a negative turnover differential. Only 2 teams got in. The other team was Georgia, right? And that's because their quarterback was turning it over a gazillion times, along with the offense. But they were going to need to get more turnovers, and every one of those turnovers mattered in this game. One set up a one-play drive for a touchdown. The other set up the game-winning drive in overtime. So, all in all, Scott Symons' defense, I got to say, is an MVP here. Now, I teased this. I teased that there is a budding superstar on this defense. And I hinted at it in the post-game reaction. Brandon Maiazono. Brandon Maiazono is he's good. That kid is going to be good. Like, more snaps for him. And I don't really care who it comes in spite of, quite frankly. Because I like this kid. I tweeted this out. Bookmark the hit that he laid on the Miami tight end right before halftime that forced the Hurricanes to kick a field goal. And that came up big. That came up huge because that would have been a touchdown. That would have made it, at the time, I believe, it would have made it a 14-7 game instead of a 10-7 game. And instead of tying the game at the beginning of the second half, SMU was able to take the lead with their touchdown drive. So it's funny how things kind of work. And they come around to be huge plays. But that was going to be a huge play regardless. But whether how he's played in coverage or how he's played against the run over the course of this season, and in a season where he probably didn't expect to get this much burn, Brandon Maiazono has been an absolute stud. And sometimes the numbers don't reflect it. He only had 4 tackles in this game against Miami. But when he comes up and when his name is spoken by the announcing team, it matters. He comes up in spots that matter. And he's gotten better and better and better with a better understanding of his role and a better understanding of the game as a whole as the season has gone on. Like, this kid is going to be very good. He's going to be a superstar. He's going to get calls from other schools, and you're going to have to fight tooth and nail to make sure he doesn't go anywhere, because that's a dude that could be a critical part of your defense for a couple more years on the horizon. Coming up next, one more segment to go to close this thing out. Big recruiting factor that is going to play in SMU's favor as they continue to try to lock down some of these kids. Let's talk about this next to close up the show on Locked On SMU. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, rivalries, and the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices that are jumping at checkout for God knows what reason. But that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices, and with no surprise fees. What you see is going to be what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals, like college football games for as low as $25. And the zone deals are outstanding too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you get to save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. All right, final segment here. Let's close this up and apologize for the sun beaming in on my face. For those of you on YouTube, I'm recording this in the morning when the sun is rising, and the way my apartment's oriented, that's what's going to happen. So bear with me on that. But SMU has a huge advantage over certain schools that they possibly could be recruiting against in this. And we haven't discussed this angle of Rhett Lashlee's extension. But college football is in a topsy-turvy place. I mean, I was just looking at a quote from Steve Sarkisian yesterday where somebody asked him to comment on all of the coaches that had been fired. And he said, yeah, there's a lot of coaches being fired, but who are they going to hire? And there's so much turnover now in college football. We don't have time to get into why I think that is and why schools are less and less patient now. But ultimately, you got to re-recruit the kids with a new staff, and you're going to have kids who are committed that now will place their commitments in limbo because they have no idea who's going to be the coach. But with SMU giving Lashlee the extension and saying, we are all aligned behind this one dude and his staff, regardless of however that loss looked to Wake Forest, we are all aligned. We're doing our thing with the NIL front. We're trying to be more progressive with this, and we're being more progressive with making sure that we have institutional stability here. That plays a huge role because you look at the jobs that are now open. Virginia Tech's open, Penn State's open. You're probably not going to recruit against those because of, where they are situated. But Florida's open, LSU's open, Auburn's open, Oklahoma State is open. And those won't be the last. But with SMU's jump into the Power Four and their subsequent success in the Power Four so far, you're almost 2 years in and you've only lost one conference game. Like with that type of success and the fact that you're going to marry stability with that, that's going to matter because we are now going to live in a world of college football where schools are going to become less and less and less patient. And it's not necessarily the schools that are going to become less and less patient. It's going to be the people that are throwing the money to the schools that are less and less patient. And when the money starts drying up, that's when the school has to act on that sort of impulsiveness. And then and that's how you get the stability that we have. But right now, if you're SMU, you have a coach that is A, likable, which is what doomed Brian Kelly. B, is winning and winning big games, which doomed James Franklin. And B and C just has a pulse on the program and such a backing around the community that he's going to stick around, which obviously that community backing dried up on Billy Napier, even though he was resuscitated his tenure at Florida because of the emergence of DJ Lagway. So Rhett Lashlee checks a lot of boxes outside of just being a good football coach, right? And the fact that you gave him an extension and gave him the ultimate vote of confidence, and then, by the way, he delivered too, that's going to go a long way with these kids. I mean, think about who you're recruiting against right now. You're trying to flip a Texas commit at tackle right now. You're trying to flip a Texas commit. Anybody know if Steve Sarkisian's going to the NFL? Because there seems to be a large contingent of people that think that could happen. Okay, so you got to deal with that factor, right? You're recruiting against Oklahoma. Now, Brent Venables is going to be around next year by virtue of that win over Tennessee, I think. But who's to say if stuff hits the fan next year, if Brent Venables is going to be? You see where I'm going here, right? If you're SMU, all you have to present is we have stability. And we know we have stability unless something absolutely craters. Rhett's going to be here. His staff is going to be here unless they get picked off by other schools. And in a big city where you can make a lot of money and we're being proactive at making sure you can make a lot of money and we're going to compete in the ACC, hey, come here. We got you covered. Like there is certainly a huge advantage to being able to present that to a kid. Is that, hey, we're all going to be here and we ain't going anywhere. And Rhett Lashlee said SMU now is a destination job. I have no idea whether he would have taken the Arkansas job. I have no idea whether he would have taken the Auburn job, even though I think he would have been a top 3 candidate, especially for Auburn. I think they were going to come after him. Arkansas is a little dicey because it's looking more and more like they might hire Bobby Petrino. But I don't know if Rhett Lashlee takes those jobs. But I know the signal flare it sends to everybody else. This dude ain't going anywhere, and we're going to make sure he doesn't go anywhere. So all you blue chip recruits that want to get developed, come on over here. We've developed wide receivers. We're putting D linemen into the NFL. We've got an offensive line coach that a lot of people like. Have you noticed that? A lot of people like Garen Justice. We got an offense that is modern and showcases everybody. Like, we're going to showcase your skill, and we're going to get you on the field too. Right? So, put all that together, and SMU is starting to have the perfect puzzle for luring recruits. And that is location, money, exposure on the field, and organizational stability. Because you can chase money all you want. But if you can marry money with good management and good organization and institution, your career is going to be a lot easier. So that's the other side of the Rhett Lashlee extension that I think really, really is going to matter when it comes to recruiting. All right, that'll do it for Locked On SMU here today on a Tuesday. Hey, tomorrow we're going to start looking at this matchup with Boston College that is looming over the weekend. Hey, make sure you check out our conference show, our Locked On ACC show with Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs as they take you through all the intrigue and storylines of the most interesting conference in college football. That's Locked On ACC on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. Take it easy.